Hello everyone, P. McGee here with another draft battle analysis video and recap, this time looking at my week 1 match in the Unova Draft League against the Stockholm Stone Journer, coached by a person. So this is a draft league that has recently concluded. I felt like there was a lot of similarities between this team and my current team in the XPDLA that I wanted to discuss, and there were some interesting battle prep scenarios and overall matchups that I felt were really interesting with this league, and I really wanted to kind of get a chance to dive back into them and discuss them a bit. And so we're going to take a look at this season, which, like I said, has concluded, so it'll be a little easier to get through in short time. But before we get into the week 1 match, we're going to go over the team I drafted for this league, compare it to what's going on in XPDLA, and then take a look at the team that a person drafted for this, as he is someone I am familiar with. He was in our Puckle Draft League not too long ago. He was not in the same division as I was, so we did not play in that league. But he is utilizing a few of the same components from that league in this one as well. And so he's got a really interesting team design going on that I wanted to dive into as well. But first, let's dive into what I drafted for this league. So, if you are familiar with my XPDLA team, you can see how very similar this is to that team. Going back to the XPDLA team, we've got the exact same top four: the Diancie, the Zapdos, the Scizor, and the Nidoking. Really strong combination of mons. Lots of decent pivot going on between the Zapdos and the Scizor to create opportunities for the Diancie and the Nidoking to get onto the field. In UDL, I opt to draft Greninja. As you'll see, that slot's kind of taken by Cinderace in terms of speed tier and momentum. I think Cinderace is a better piece overall that fits team builds a little cleaner, just because Greninja's a little frail. You'll see that it has some type clashing with like the Pyukumuku here, and I think offensive fire, is just really fun to work with, especially when it has that speed stat to work with. And Cinderace also offers that anti-hazard play, which Greninja does not. Greninja does have Toxic Spikes to work with, which Nidoking also already does, as well as Spikes play, which I don't use too much on frail mons. I like it with some of my thicker pieces like a Skarmory or a Chestnut, who you can see farther down. But Greninja just has a harder time playing that hazards game. I don't have access to Battle Bond or Protein, so it doesn't have some of that same levels of versatility, but I still think it's a solid speed tier to work with. And that 122 is really helpful for things like Tornadus, which sit at 121. So it's not useless, just a little less desirable than the Cinderace. Silvally, Pyukumuku, who are on both teams as well. Silvally's just got that versatility that's really desired. A couple of my types are kind of frail, and so it makes it difficult to be able to use them in certain situations. In case I need a reliable dark type that has some bulk to it, so Ally is a really good answer to that. I don't have a dragon on this team, nor did I draft one. Going back to the XPDLA team, I didn't draft a dragon on that team either. So while I don't have a dragon, I have access to that typing, which is really helpful. So it means that if I need certain resists on a given week, if dragon's just really free to spam against an opponent, Solali is a really good piece for that. Pyukumuku, I like Larry. I think he does a really great job with pivoting, a really great job at walling out certain types of setup. So I think he's just very effective if used right, and I feel like I've had success with that in the past. Licky, both teams as well. Really good wish supporter, really great at just kind of tanking some special attackers, offering a needed cleric role on the team, because having access to a reliable cleric piece is always really helpful. And I feel like Licky, especially at the cost he is, offers a good option for that role. Chestnut, again, Chestnut's on both of these teams as well. I like Chestnut. I like a reliable, bulky spike setter. My first season of XPDLA, I ran Skarmory with spikes a lot. It's very effective. I think boots negate a lot of the potency of stealth rocks in Generation 8. I think that a lot of mons that are going to be frail to rocks are going to run the boots regularly. So having access to spikes is just really helpful, because not a lot of mons that are grounded are going to run boots unless they're fire type. So this is just a good way of chipping down teams, wearing them out with a hazard that they're less likely to check with boots, because no mon is, outright weak to it. And so I like Chestnut for that role. And then you'll see a Smeargle and Colossal on the bottom here. They are technically not on my week 1 roster. I start the season with a Hoopa. I will drop it after week 1 and pick up some additional bulk and gimmick pieces. Like I said, this team didn't have a fire type going into it, so Colossal kind of offers that role. The rock typing is a weird double up. I usually don't draft rock unless it's Mega Diancie, so to double draft it twice is fairly surprising by my normal draft standards. But he also offers some spike stacking, offers some rapid spin, which is nice since there's a lot of pressure on Zapdos to be that reliable defog piece, although, Silvally and Scizor can fit that as well. And Mega Diancie offers the bounce back. So Colossal just offers that little extra piece. And then Smirgle, kind of put him on both teams that I have the option to. I like his speed tier at 75, but it is something that needs to be checked. I've used it pretty effectively in the past in an Ubers league, so it's a kind of mod that you need to respect its speed tier with, especially if you're vulnerable to Spore, because it can do a lot of damage if it's able to get that kind of matchup where it can come in, click Spore, set webs, and then go straight into hyper offense. And you can see how similar these teams are. The only differences between the two are the Cinderace, which is a Greninja in this league, and then the Honchkrow, which is a Colossal in this league. I think my XPDLI team is more rounded as a result. I think Cinderace is a better piece. I think Honchkrow is a more fun and usable piece than Colossal and has some gimmick offensive sets that can be played with. But I'm content with this draft. I thought it was very effective. So Valet gets me past a couple of things I was concerned about in terms of tight matchups or some certain situations. So overall, very content with this. Really difficult to break team, but really good breaker pieces with things like Nidoking, Mega Diancie, Scizor in the right matchups, and Greninja as well in the right matchups so I can run specs. So that's what I drafted. We're going to slide over to a person's team. He, in the last league he was participating in, he ran Heatran Zarude, really good, scary, difficult to break core, really hard to hit it for strong damage, especially when he has 2 really good outs, or 3 really good outs, from, 4, good God. He has a lot of good outs from fighting, which is their shared weakness. He can flee into Gliscor, he can flee into Mega Gallade, he can flee into Toxapex, or he can flee into Aromatisse. So really good options all around just to escape those weaknesses. Gliscor is really difficult to KO. Toxapex is really difficult to KO. It's really hard to switch into Mega Gallade. Heatran can be tough to KO unless you can get your ground mon in easily, or he didn't scout the ground attack very well. But again, he has really good outs with Gliscor or Rotom Wash. You'll see in the week 1 matchup, Salamence is actually not on his team. It is technically a Latios in week 1. He does trade it out. I think that was the right call since he already has a really good psychic type with the Gallade. So Salamence offers a more usable flying typing because Gliscor is not really relying on that flying for any sort of offensive attacks. It only has acrobatics to really work with as that attack. So Salamence gets that dual wing beat option to work with, as well as the very helpful dragon typing. So overall, a really good draft for him, especially, and he hits a needed speed tier too, because the Latios was also matching at 110 with the Mega Gallade. So they were kind of just sharing their roles a little too much. And so Salamence just kind of gives it something different to work with. And another option is like a wish support in case he doesn't want to use the Aromatisse for that. So overall, I think his team is really scary, really tough to push through. Not a lot of pieces that can get through, more than one thing. So if he has the right switch out, he just kind of forces you out and it gets difficult to break him. So you're trying to get some hard read scenarios with a lot of Mons. So with that in mind, I'll kind of go over what my prep was for this match. The Mega Diancie, kind of forced to go max speed, max special attack. Unfortunately, the speed tie with the Latios and the Mega Glade kind of limits its mobility in terms of move pool. Um, Earth Power, Moonblast, as the good coverage options. Moonblast hits everything pretty hard. Earth Power, really specifically for the Toxapex. Heal Bell, because I can't fit it on Licky Licky, who we'll get to, so I needed a way to clear off hazards. And then Rock Polish, although I think in hindsight, Rock Polish may have been the wrong call. Something like Calm Mind might have been more efficient for a matchup like this to help push through something like Toxapex. Zapdos, a pretty reliable, bulky piece here. Defog, Roost to just do its normal things. Hurricane as a way to try to push through something like Gliscor, depending on the EV investment. And the Discharge is really helpful for fishing for paralysis on a lot of mons. In case Gliscor is not in a position to come onto the field, you can kind of try to get some discharge stuff going on. I believe it's speed invested in a way to outspeed max. Oops, wrong team. Max speed modest Heatran or something like that, just to help get past that a little bit. maybe EV creeped a little past that as well, but generally they're just to help check maybe a more offensive Heatran. Pyukumuku, very defensive here. A what is it, Jolly Gallade, which is what he kind of has to run in this matchup, struggles to hit KO this. In fact, it can't with close combat, and it can't set up. So it's just a way of keeping Gallade at bay so it doesn't overrun me. Recover, counter, Mirror Coat, and then Gastro Acid. I think there's a better Pyukumuku set to be run in hindsight. The Gastro Acid is very specific tech in case the Gliscor is staying on the field, because what Gastro Acid does is it suppresses the ability. And the nice thing about Toxic Orb sets on a Gliscor is that the toxic damage accumulates. So it could, if the Gliscor is sitting there long enough, it could, amass to like 80% damage after a turn. So there's an option to get really sneaky with an attack like Gastro Acid to break a Gliscor by surprise. But I don't think this is an overall great set. There's no mobility with it. I think I've misused this Pyukumuku in prep, and I think I could have run something a little more clear. Licky Licky, Wish Protect, Earthquake knockoff, really specifically to bop items, and then Earthquake really specifically for the Heatran. Heatran can't taunt Licky Licky, but it can Toxic it, or it can try to Magma Storm stall it out. And so it's just a good way of dealing with that. And then Max Spadaf just to really give me some defensive bulk, special defensive bulk against the Heatran, just to kind of keep Magma Storm from tearing through me. Hoopa, Choice Scarf Hoopa, it's able to run Modest in this matchup because that's enough to outspeed the Latios and the Gallade, so it can get past them with the Scarf. Shadow Ball, Hyperspace Hole for the Toxapex, Focus Blast for something like the Zarude, and then the Destiny Bond. Really just there to try to the break the Toxapex. I am perhaps a little too reliant on it in this matchup to be the breaker piece for Toxapex. I don't have a lot of ways to hit the Toxapex for good damage otherwise. Zapdos can if it gets a discharge on it, but it's hard to get that discharge to hit reliably. Diancie can if it can hit with the Earth Power, but it has to kind of set up a little bit. So it's just a lot of reliance on Hoopa to really nearly one-hit KO it. And then Greninja, I'm opting for a Choice Band here. It's more of a sneaky option just to if I can deal with the Toxapex, Greninja has a really easy time being super, super scary. U-turn, Ice Beam, Waterfall, Gunk Shot. I throw the extra EVs in special attack because Ice Punch has a really hard time one-hit KOing Gliscor, just even off of like almost no investment, it can nearly survive. So Ice Beam just gives me a better chance to one-hit KO. And then, Momentum, Gunk Shot's really helpful for the Aromatisse as well as the Zarude in case I'm not locked into U-turn, but Gunk Shot can kind of keep Zarude out from being a problem. And then speed invested to creep past, the Latios and the Mega Gallade. So that's the team. That's kind of what's in mind here. The goal is to try to break Toxapex early. If I break Toxapex early, the team has a lot more options to control the game, just because pieces like Gliscor have a harder time pivoting around when they don't have that easy out, especially from ice attacks with the Toxapex. We're going to let this game play at normal speed for a few turns, and then we're going to pretty much kick it up the speed a lot because it's a very, very, very long match. As is the habit for a person. He is known for having some very long matches, and looking at his team that he brought, it's pretty clear how that's possible with a regenerator, a wisher, a toxic healer, and then a very bulky Heatran. So it's gonna be a long match. But more or less, the last 80 turns are predetermined, so I can just kind of let it play at hyperspeed while I talk through it. Toxapex lead, Greninja. I can't fight that with Greninja, obviously. I don't want to U-turn on the option. In case he has Rocky Helmet, don't want to set that off early. Fortunately, I get Toxic as a result. Gliscor gets an early activation of its Toxic Orb, which is unfortunate. Couldn't knock that off. I get Heatran on the field. I'm able to get the Earthquake early on the Heatran to do a massive amount of damage. I was never going to one-hit KO beyond barring a crit. It just had the bulk to survive that. Gliscor comes back. I knew a switch out was going to happen, so I try to knock off to take an item away. Unfortunately, Gliscor no longer needs its item, so that's unfortunate. Getting some wishing in here. Going to try to pivot around this Gliscor now. Greninja is an easy switch in on this because it can survive any one attack and then get that roost to get, or that wish to get its health back to normal. Pex comes in. I expect as much. You turn out for momentum. Try to go into Hoopa. My hope here going into the Toxapex is that it's a physically defensive Toxapex so that Hyperspace Hole has a lot of damage output, has the potential one hit KO. Zarude isn't here, so something is going to eat the Psychic Attack. But I'm going to go for it here. I unfortunately run into a specially defensive Toxapex, and then on top of that, I get one hit KO'd by knockoff. One of the issues I ran into with this is when I was calcing this, I didn't look at the appropriate calc. I looked at a negative attack nature Toxapex because in the calc it wasn't accounting for knockoff as a move; it was only accounting for Scald as a damaging attack. And because of that, that Toxapex on the calc was running something like, a con nature or a negative attack nature, whereas this one's probably a negative speed nature, something like a relaxed or probably actually a sassy nature, I'm assuming in this case. So it just has the bulk to take the hit, and then it doesn't have that negative attack calc, so it has enough power to one hit KO Hoopa guaranteed. Just really unfortunate prep on my part. So I lose my breaker piece for this Toxapex really, really early. And so now as a result, I'm gonna turn it up to fast now. I'm basically gonna flounder around. This is kind of why I felt like I should have had Calm Mind Diancie. If I had Calm Mind Diancie, that was a perfect window to click Calm Mind. And I think this is a very wide open game if I'm able to click Calm Mind safely there. Instead, I'm opting for a Rock Polish, which I think is not the correct setup item or setup move in this matchup. Heal Bell here to get my Licky Licky, or my, not my Licky Licky, my Zapdos back to full health. Able to get rid of the Heatran early on the predict switch in for it, which is very helpful. Gallade comes in, misses the Stone Edge. I don't have my pivot move here, which is obviously the concern. So now I have to hard switch around a lot. My issue though is that I can't really break this Gliscor very well because I needed that Toxapex gone for my Greninja to really threaten here because Greninja just can't do anything against this Toxapex. And since it can't do anything against the Toxapex, unless APP, a person misplays, I just don't do anything notable with the Greninja. So it's just sitting there on the sidelines being ineffective. I'm trying to set up with the Diancie here. Obviously, I think that's a mistake. I'm going to go for Earth Power, which is, again, of no value because I know this is especially defensive Toxapex, so I'm just kind of taking damage for no reason. I'm going to bring this up to hyper fast because, like I said, this is a long game. But really what I'm trying to do here is just see if he's going to make a mistake, create an opening. The longer a game goes out, the more opportunity there is for a misplay, for something for me to work with and get myself back in this. Unfortunately, he's just not making any mistakes right now. I'm trying to get my Licky Licky back to health because I needed that wish support going on, but I can't break this Gliscor. My best hope right now is to force the Aromatisse maybe into a Heal Bell to take away that. So, getting paralysis on a couple of things outside of Gliscor or something like that to force a Heal Bell just to give myself a chance to break that Gliscor because I just don't have the raw power to do it. The Gliscor is also a specially defensive Gliscor, so my Hurricane could have potentially 2-hit KO'd, non-invested or a max defense or max speed, max HP. It could have maybe been a 2-hit KO position, but unfortunately, this Gliscor is just really, really specially defensive. I didn't bring my Nidoking really because I thought this Gliscor was going to be such a problem. My Nidoking wasn't going to be effective. I assumed Gliscor would speed creep the Nidoking because it can. It has a 95 speed and my Nidoking's 85. Earthquake can pretty reliably one-hit KO with not a lot of investment, so I just didn't like its effectiveness in this matchup. Perhaps in hindsight, something like a Shukaberry on a Nidoking might have been more effective to just deal with this Gliscor because my Hoopa's gone, and that was really my main breaker to open up this game. And without it to open up this game against that Gliscor Pex wall, I just don't really have an easy way through. I get the paralysis on the Latios, which is nice. Opens up my game a little bit because the Latios can't be as effective anymore. But the problem is if I can't deal with Gliscor and I'm not successfully dealing with Gliscor right now, then I'm just very vulnerable. I can't really get through this Latios. I can't get through this Aromatisse. It's got the Wish Protect to go with. I'm running out of PP on the Hurricane, so I'm running out of PP to work with here. He's just in a really good position to stall me out because I didn't get enough output out of the Hoopa. And I just don't have a good way to push through the Toxapex when my Diancie is too fragile to really hit the field. My Zapdos can't break the Gliscor, and my Greninja can't do anything to uh, that Toxapex. I got a crit there on the Gliscor. Could have been helpful if maybe I had gotten a 5% higher roll, or if it was 5% lower in health, I could have maybe broke it there. But my Zapdos is getting frail. I'm getting hit by the earthquakes on roosts when I hit the ground, so he's just playing it really smart. My Pyukumuku is not being effective in this matchup. I brought the wrong set. I didn't need Mirror Coat in hindsight. I don't think. I don't think it offered a lot. Whereas Baton Pass is maybe the more appropriate route to go. Gliscor comes in. I can't get anything going. Even if I had generated, because I used Ice Beam a couple of turns ago, even if I had generated a freeze on the Toxapex, is meaningless because they can just use Scald to immediately unfreeze. So I just don't have anything going in my favor in this matchup. I'm almost out of Hurricane PP, down to the last one. So I'm just really not in a good spot here, and this game is slowly kind of getting out of control for me. I just don't have any way to break his pieces, and I'm realizing that very early on. There is a chance if I can get maybe a wish onto the Diancie, I can try to set up and generate some momentum, but it's hard to create that window. Pretty much has to be in front of the Latios as it's forced to heal or something like that. There I go. I get it in front of the Toxapex. So again, if I had Calm Mind here, I'm in a much better position because I can Calm Mind. I can do a lot with that. Gliscor can't switch in on a Moonblast once I've Calm Minded. Toxapex isn't well positioned to handle an Earth Power. I can play a pretty easy Predicts game with the Gliscor. Unfortunately, Rock Polish just isn't going to do the job. I'm not getting anything going against the Gliscor. Trying to see if I can create a misplay to get a scenario to be effective and generate something, but he has me pretty much dead to rights. He's not making any mistakes. I'm getting forced into the Diancie play because we're doing a whole dance around that Diancie just isn't winning. Um, I'm going to, I think, Heal Bell there to get some momentum back. Larry can't pivot. I'm getting near the point where I can be effective. I Earth Powered Toxapex into Earth Power KO range. I Moonblasted Gliscor into Moonblast KO range. I expected Aromatisse to come in. Aromatisse is outside of that range. I'm going to Moonblast here, but I can't really do anything with it. I Rock Polish on that. My hope is that I don't die to that like I just did. Unfortunately, the Moonblast from Aromatisse kills me, and that's really where this game is over. There's just no coming back from this. It's pretty apparent that I've lost. Maybe I can generate another KO if he's being sloppy at the end, but I've essentially lost this game because I've lost my ability to kill this Toxapex. And since I can't kill the Toxapex, Greninja can't do anything. So I'll let the rest of this play out, but I just didn't bring the proper breaker pieces. I think Nidoking had more value in the matchup than I wanted to give it credit for. I think Special Greninja is perhaps the way to go. I over concerned myself with the Zarude, and so I liked the ability for U-turn to one-hit KO it with a band when that wasn't maybe necessary because Zarude doesn't even show up, and I had Zarude easily handled with Zapdos pretty much. And so I didn't need to use Greninja this way. Week one was just a lot of me trying to get myself accustomed with this team, and it just wasn't the right team. I'm yielding this game at this point. It's pretty clear it's over. So I'm just trying to kind of let it push through and be done with. Licky Licky goes down. Pyukumuku doesn't get the counter kill. I was hoping maybe I could fish and get another KO, but he's playing it smart, just toxic styling me. Pyukumuku's going down, and that's going to be the game. So really well performed match by a person. He has a really tough to deal with core. I was able to kind of get my techie play on the Heat Train with an Earthquake to get that KO, but I misplayed my way around the Toxapex, which you have to respect as a mon to deal with. I think should have committed to a trapping set with the Pyukumuku, a soak trap set and toxic the Toxapex, because I was shown to get those situations in the match where I could have blocked it and then toxic stalled it. Unfortunately, it's not the set I brought. The set I brought was ineffective, and so some lessons learned. Like I said, I dropped Hoopa immediately after this. It became clear to me Hoopa didn't have the breaking power I needed it to have, especially if I'm going to be relying on it running Scarf. And so I opted to just have a Smurgle, which offered me some techier stuff, and then a Colossal, which again offered me some spinning, which I felt I needed, as well as a theoretical offensive set with like a Meteor Beam, absorbing a fire move to get the Steam Engine proc. But I fall to 0-1, -5 differential, some important lessons learned about how to deal with some of the stall mechanics. I haven't faced a lot of Gliscor's in the past, and so I underrated Gliscor's ability to be just an absolute tank. I've used it as a tank, but I was not expecting it to be as effective as it was in this match to wall me out. So really good job by a person here to put me off to really the worst start I've ever had in a draft league. -5 is as bad as it pretty much gets. I've had a -4 start, and that's the only other time I've lost week one. So he hands me my worst loss in opening week for draft ever, and so I need to do some reorganizing and figuring out my team from there. But like I said, I finished this draft league, so I have more matches to show, and I'll dive right into those. So don't expect too long a wait until the next one. So stay tuned.